I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy work and home lives to join us today as part of Electrical Safety Fortnight. I'm Chris Bombolas, your MC for today. Can I begin with acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which this event is taking place and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. A little bit of housekeeping to start off with. If you have any questions for any of our speakers today, type them into the live Q&A box on the right of your screen and we'll get to them at the end of the session when we go to the panel section of our presentation. If you have any technical problems during the live stream, please make sure the sound on your computer is turned on. Refresh your browser, and if that doesn't work, contact us via the live Q&A chat box. Or drop us a line at events@oar.qld.gov.au. You can also change the size of your screen to full screen by selecting the 4 small arrows next to the volume bar at the bottom of your screen. Let's get into the first of our 7 presenters here today, and I'd like to welcome Rob Wicks from the Electrical Safety Office. Rob is currently the Acting Executive Director of the Electrical Safety Office, overseeing the strategic delivery of electrical safety across Queensland. Today, Rob is discussing matters relating to the Electrical Safety Office.
Good morning, and firstly I'd like to acknowledge and thank everyone joining us online this morning for Electrical Safety Fortnight, the Industry and Contractors webinar. And I also pass on my thanks to the panel joining me today for their time, sharing important messages on electrical safety with this audience. A special shout out to our colleagues in industry joining us all the way from up in Weipa. Fantastic event to be hosted up there this morning, and it's great that we can get our message of Electrical Safety Fortnight to reach audiences far and wide. I'd like to acknowledge the work of the staff involved in pulling together events and organising this morning's webinar. They're doing a fantastic job. As Chris said, my name is Robert Wicks. I'm currently the Acting Executive Director for the Electrical Safety Office. And we've got an exceptional panel here this morning covering a range of topics. You're going to hear about recent changes to the Electrical Safety Act, about the importance of having a QTP, an update on the new ESO technical guides, the importance of upstream isolation, and how to ensure that your equipment meets Queensland requirements. We're also going to hear about the new Safe Work and Supervision Guide for apprentices. I've been asked to provide you with an update on the work we've been doing over the last year and offer a glimpse into our priorities over the next 12 months to help make workers, contractors, homes and communities safer for Queenslanders. I'm hopeful that our audience here today is aware of the work of the Electrical Safety Office, but if you're new to the industry or joining us for the first time, in its simplest terms, we're responsible for administering the Electrical Safety Act, the regulations, the codes of practice and relevant standards that work together to create an electrical safety framework. Our role as the regulator is to support the prevention of death, injury and destruction of property caused by electricity. And so what does that involve? Well, last year, the ESO undertook engagement activities with almost 4,000 people from across industry and our stakeholders. We reached an audience of more than 85,000 subscribers via our eSafe electrical newsletter, which is where we share information on product recalls, prosecution outcomes, decisions from our electrical licensing committee, and education on compliance with electrical safety requirements. Our inspectors have been very busy. Unfortunately, we responded to more than 1,500 notified events last year, and during that time we also conducted nearly 2,800 audits and attended more than 4,700 site visits, in total issuing more than 2,100 statutory notices. We're continuing our crackdown on the advertising and performance of electrical work through online platforms. Our audit targets these platforms, which included more than 5,000 profiles being assessed, more than 220 notices being issued, and caused the removal of more than 1,000 advertisements for electrical work from those platforms. And generally speaking, that's occurred when the person posting those ads was unable to demonstrate that they held the required licence for the work they were advertising. Our equipment safety specialists performed check testing on 113 pieces of electrical equipment, ranging on everything from washing machines to pool chlorinators DC isolators to extension leads, room heaters to kitchen appliances. They supported the registration of nearly 50,000 pieces of electrical equipment in the National Equipment Safety Database, and they've also been busy responding to over 9,000 equipment-related inquiries, which assists industry to comply with the Electrical Equipment Safety Scheme. Our licensing team have also been very busy, and they've responded to more than 27,000 inquiries to assist licence holders, while helping support the administration of a framework of more than 64,000 licensed electrical workers and over 13,000 electrical contractors. And what's coming up next? Well, we're going to continue with our strong focus on engaging with the community, and we look forward to increasing our visibility in regional and remote areas. But we certainly won't be taking eye off our role as a regulator. And so our compliance and engagement plan is focused on priorities in high-risk working environments, such as the construction and demolition industry, on everything from small domestic construction and demolition through to major construction projects. We'll also be carrying out our electrical contractor and worker audits to make sure that the installation standards, licensing and safe work practices of contractors and their workers are being complied with to ensure everybody's safe. And we'll also be carrying out audits in the community to ensure that the electrical safety of the general public and vulnerable people within a community is being met. Our monitoring of renewable energy projects in high-risk workplaces is set to increase across solar, wind and energy storage installations, as well as high-risk environments, including high voltage and hazardous area inspections. And we're gearing up to launch the new electrical safety online licensing system, which is a significant upgrade to help make it easier to self-manage your electrical licence online. All of that, coupled with the introduction of new electrical safety legislation that Paris will be speaking about this morning, will help support the industry and the overall effectiveness of the Electrical Safety Office in delivering our role for the Queensland community. I really hope you enjoy this morning's events and have an opportunity to catch up with some of the other engagements that we have planned over the next 2 weeks. You're sure to learn something new and possibly take the chance to meet new people in your industry. Before I hand you back to Chris, I'm pleased to share the launch of our new Don't Do It Yourself campaign, which is launched this week. We developed the DDIY campaign as we continue to see serious injuries occurring when people undertake unlicensed electrical work around their own home. Research has found that between 2011 to 2016, there were 5,261 non-work-related electrical injuries in Queensland, and the most common injuries occurred when members of the public were undertaking do-it-yourself activities like installing electrical components, especially things like light fittings and power points. The campaign supports the need for safety awareness and community education to prevent fatalities and serious injuries from DIY electrical work. So we're very pleased to announce the important messages in this campaign. Quite simply, never DIY electrical work, always leave it to a professional. Thanks for watching.
Well, thanks, Rob. And as Rob mentioned, our next speaker is Paris Hooper, Director, Industrial Work, Health and Safety and Electrical Safety in the Office of Industrial Relations. Paris's team is responsible for the electrical safety legislative framework in Queensland and has carriage of the implementation of the recommendations from the review of Queensland's Electrical Safety Act 2002. Today, Paris will update us on the Electrical Safety Act review. Welcome, Paris.
Thanks very much. Hi, I'm Paris, as Chris said, the Director of Electrical Safety Policy here at the Office of Industrial Relations. Today, I'll be chatting through some of the recent legislative changes that have occurred following the review of the Electrical Safety Act 2002. In August 2020, a review of Queensland's Electrical Safety Act was announced. This was the first review since the commencement of the Electrical Safety Act over 20 years ago. The review was completed in December 2021 and made 83 recommendations. The purpose of the review was to ensure Queensland's electrical safety legislative framework keeps pace with new and emerging technologies and continues to provide high standards of safety for workers and the community. In 2023, a consultation process occurred on the review's recommendations, including through a discussion paper. In 2024, to implement a first and second tranche of recommendations from the review, the Office of Industrial Relations has been working to amend the Electrical Safety Act and Electrical Safety Regulation. The Electrical Safety and Other Legislation Amendment Bill, also known as the ASOLA Bill, was introduced into Queensland Parliament in May 2024. The ASOLA Bill makes amendments to both the Act and regulation. On 30 August 2024, the bill received what's called assent, which means it's now commenced. Additionally, the Electrical Safety Regulation is being amended via an upcoming amendment regulation expected to be made later this month. Today, I'm going to talk to you about some of the key changes relevant to industry and contractors which are being made by both the ASOLA Bill and amendment regulation. Let's start with changes from the bill. The ASOLA Bill clarifies the definition of electrical installation. The former definition of electrical installation did not consider electricity being generated outside of distribution entities, such as coal-fired power stations, or energy being stored in batteries to supply the network at a later date. As such, the definition clarifies that work on these newer technologies is electrical installation work and therefore requires an electrical work licence. The ASOLA Bill amends the definition of electrical installation work to exclude the replacement of similar appliances. This means that work will become electrical equipment work, which can be completed by certain restricted licence holders. This ensures these licence holders can fully complete tasks, such as replacing hot water systems, where the replacement meets the prescribed circumstances. The circumstances are prescribed in the ES regulation and include requirements such as that the appliances have the same voltage capacity and perform the same function in the same way as the old appliance. As an electrical worker or contractor, you can face disciplinary action by the Electrical Licensing Committee. Examples of when you could face disciplinary action can include if you perform unsafe, negligent, or incompetent electrical work. The ASOLA Bill refines the powers of the Electrical Licensing Committee to clarify that the committee can include or change a condition or restriction in a licence. An example of a condition might be for the licence holder to attend and complete a particular training course. An example of a restriction might be that the contractor cannot undertake a certain type of work unless they're being supervised by another licence holder. This amendment makes clear that the disciplinary action available to the committee and ensures that the committee can deliver proportionate disciplinary action to licence holders. These powers extend to individuals working in Queensland on interstate licences. If a licence holder has a condition or restriction imposed upon them, the changes made by the ASOLA Bill require them to notify the PCBU that they perform or supervise electrical work for. This is an existing requirement for other disciplinary actions, such as if a licence has been suspended, but is now extended to include conditions or restrictions. Moving on to the amendment regulation. The amendment regulation makes additional changes to the electrical safety regulation to implement recommendations from the review. The amendment regulation is anticipated to be approved this month, in September. Key changes to be aware of that are coming up in the amendment regulation include a new requirement to de-energise a domestic building's electrical installation before working in its roof space. From 1 January 2025, From 1 January 2025, workers and PCBUs must ensure that work is not carried out in the roof space of a building unless the relevant electrical installation for the building is de-energised. There is an exemption if it's not reasonably practicable to carry out the work in the roof space while the installation is de-energised, or if it's necessary for it to remain energised to test, service or commission something. If it does remain energised, additional safety measures and procedures, such as risk assessments, apply. This new requirement applies to all types of work in roof spaces or where a person is required to put any part of their body in a roof space, including pest control, insulation work, gas installation and electrical work. The ESO is preparing additional guidance to help you navigate these changes. Another key change is the prohibition of electrical work near energised equipment. This requirement previously only prohibited work on energised electrical equipment, which did not protect against the risk of arc flash and close range work. This means that from 1 January 2025, requirements for electrical work on energised equipment are extended to also apply to electrical work near energised electrical equipment. Near, in this context, means within 3 metres of the equipment, including an exposed part of the equipment. Please be assured you will receive further information and communication around these changes in the coming months as they progress through government approval processes. Keep an eye out on the ESO or WorkSafe website. Looking forward, the government will continue to work through the review's many recommendations to keep delivering important improvements to Queensland's electrical safety framework. This final slide includes a web link which provides some detailed information about the review, the ASOLA bill, and processes to further implement the review's recommendations. Thank you.
Our thanks to Paris for updating and clarifying matters under the changed legislation. And of course, if you have a question for Paris for later on in the presentation during our Q&A session, please use the live Q&A chat box and we'll get to those during the panel session. Time now for our next speaker, and I'd like to welcome to the podium Shane Greener, Principal Electrical Qualified Technical Person, QBuild. Shane started his electrical journey in 1989 and worked mainly in the domestic and commercial fields. He's worked for Civil Aviation Authority, Telstra, Queensland Health, Public Works, and also electrical contracting as a sole trader part of that time. Working for the Department of Public Works, QBuild, since 1999, Shane started as an electrical tradesperson and in 2014 moved into a more office-based role as an endorsee to QBuild's electrical contractor's licence. In 2023, he gained the position of Principal Qualified QTP for QBuild, where he facilitates both electrical safety and Arctic licence for public works statewide. Shane has gained several other qualifications, including an electrical contractor's qualification, special class electrician's qualification, open cabler's licensing plus endorsements, Certificate 2 in split air conditioning and heat pump systems, restricted water plumbing licence, electrical, Certificate 4 training and assessment, Certificate 4 and diploma in workplace health, in workplace and safety and solar grid installation and design course, which has broadened his knowledge base. I'm sure there's not much he doesn't know about electrical stuff. Please welcome Shane.
Thanks, Chris. That was a mouthful. It goes on forever. Thanks, everyone. So, as stated there, we've done a bit of a case study along the way into QTPs and the importance of them in an electrical contracting business. So that also broadens out to the QBPs. So every contracting business would have a QTP and a QBP as part of their everyday life. So the sole traders, they would be one in the same. The worker will possibly be the QTP and the QBP. A lot of sole traders are husband and wife jobs, so their QBPs will be the wife in that situation. So in business and corporations, there may be one or two more QTPs around the place, and that's all dependent on the size of the business and the landscape of the business. In our situation, our landscape is statewide, so the footprint is quite cumbersome, and we have multiple QTPs to facilitate that. So we did our collaboration with a number of government departments over the time. So just to put some together is TMR, Q Health, and also Energy Queensland. So ways the QTP supports the contracting business, there's probably 4 pillars to that, and that's through safe systems of work, which implements the SWIMs, the manuals that workers have in their vans, procedures, lockout tagout guides. Also goes through a calibration regime, so that would be test equipment, having them calibrated as per manufacturer's specifications. So that's probably around the 12 monthly part. They go in, they keep a register of that, and they move forward. Another pillar of it is training and competence. So, that encompasses worker audits. So every 6 months, we go through all of our staff across the state. So presently we have about 156 electrical workers across the state. We go through there and they do, they'll go through, we have a specifically designed test board, which is like a domestic residence. We have multiple faults that switch into that. We've actually just upgraded that. We've got an old board that's probably 2002. We've just purchased some new ones. So we go through that. There's faults in there. They go through their suite of testing. They go through a lockout, tagout quiz and upgrade of that as well. So we've put together 2 videos recently. So one on the testing schedule and one in the LOTO process as well. So they're there that annually the workers go through that and they get signed off on it. Obviously, regular toolbox talks, monthly. I'll talk about that a bit later on in our sort of structure that we've put together recently. Obviously, registers in regards to licence registers and registers in regards to other licences that the workers do have. So we're not having workers go out and do work that they're not recognisable with. And also, so tool maintenance. So we've got the tools coming back through, and they're not using sort of Cat 2, Cat 1 test equipment. Everything's Cat 4, Cat 3, and they're in good condition. So obviously, supervision is another part of the pillars. So we go through there. We got worker inductions that we step through every time a new worker starts, and we also have worker audits, that is a bit different to the skills audit. So we go out and have a look at their on-site as they're actually working to step through their take fives, their work procedures, and even their quality of work too. So that's all there. And as I said, the work being performed. So we do inspections on those things as well. Even they're right down to their work vehicles. I know it's hard with tradesmen, but we're trying to keep them as clean as we possibly can to manoeuvring around in them a bit easier. So the last pillar there is the technical expertise. So, advice to workers. We don't know everything. We've also joined other organisations around the place also that we leverage off to gain that information. So that's a big bonus for our workers. They're able to reach out to other people other than us. Advise on committees. So different committees we have. We've put together a governance committee within our electrical business at QBuild, and so we sit as advisors to that committee. So we also do interact with a lot of reclassification of workers. So obviously different workers, different levels of skill, so different classifications. So we go through the classifications on those as well, plus the interview process. And then we also step into the recalls from ACCC and the ESO, so the recall on and even new products. So go through and chat about new technology in the business. So the structure we have put together over quite some time, and I'd like to make mention to, I suppose I'd call him my mentor. He has put together a lot of this prior to him leaving. So we've got a QTP as myself as a principal. I have 2 understudies at the present, and then we have multiple QTPs across the state that are our senior electrical supervisors. So within that team there, we have, within the senior team, the 3 of us, we have fortnightly meetings. And then with the broader QTP guys, we have a monthly meeting, so that happens at the end of each month. And then from there, they'll hold their own regional toolbox talks at the beginning of the next month and put any information that we have or new information across to all the workers, so everybody's getting the same information and on the same page. So through the governance committee, we have brought on that the QBPs, so the business people, the regional directors in each area are now our QBPs. So brings their business foresight into the contracting business that we have. There's a lot of a good business acumen that we have across the state, so why not use it? Also, as I said, we've put together the electrical licensing governance committee. So that's made up of the manager out of our workplace health and safety. We've got our electrical engineers on there. We've got a lot of other electrical people within the business, and then others that touch on our business also. So we've put that together. That comes together every 3 months, and we keep our business sort of running and safe through that governance committee. From there, we go across and get any information out and change policies, change procedures, update SWIMs out of that committee also. So that's pretty much what we've done in our study of the QTP and the reasoning for them. If there's any questions that you guys like to ask, as Chris said earlier, just put them in the chat and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shane. As Shane mentioned, use the Q&A chat box for our Q&A session. That'll happen during the panel session at the end of our speakers. From what I can gather, QBuild, Shane, and you can correct me later on if I'm wrong here, just summarising that structure is important, consistency is important, your procedure and the way you carry out the work is important. Communication is paramount, and sharing information through the different layers and effective communication and effective sharing of information, new technologies, whatever it might be, is vital for your organisation. So we can expand on that a little later on during the Q&A session. Let's move on to our next speaker, and it's my pleasure to introduce Peter Reid from the Electrical Safety Office. Peter is an electrical safety inspector for the ESO. He started his career in the electrical field with an apprenticeship as an electrical mechanic in 1981. Gaining his electrical work licence in 1985, it marked the start of a career filled with extensive experience across domestic, commercial and industrial electrical work. Between 1991 and 2002, Peter successfully operated his own electrical contracting business. In 2002, Pete moved into the role of an electrical safety inspector, applying his extensive knowledge and expertise in the field. Over the years, he has gained several additional qualifications in the electrical and electronic disciplines. Peter is a life member of the Institute of Electrical Inspectors, where he currently holds a position on the board of directors. His leadership within the Institute includes serving as Deputy Chairman from 2011 to 2016 and as Chairman from 2016 through to 2023. Welcome, Peter.
Good morning, everybody. I'm excited to be here today because at the release of some technical guides. Now, back when I was a electrical contractor, when I gained my licence, there was a nice little folder turned up in the mail and it had a set of guides in. Now, with the exception of the wiring rules, they were my most used references for myself and for employees. They had very, very valuable information in. They were produced back in the 80s and 90s and haven't been produced since. So it's my pleasure now. The ESO has now released these 6 new guides, very similar to the old ones, very common sense approach. Doesn't cover everything, but very straightforward information on some topics that we see a lot of incidents. So fault currents, safe working on or near energised electrical equipment, service and submain polarity testing, testing low voltage installations, isolation and lockout procedures, and working on electrical installations with connections to alternate supplies. The guidebooks will be available for free download on the WorkSafe website, and unfortunately I believe they haven't quite made it there yet, but they will be there soon. So the first of our books, fault currents. So this is a area where many incidents occur. People get serious injury. They spend months or years recovering. And it's so simple. The difference between nothing occurring and a serious incident can be less than a millimetre. So if you're working around energised parts, there's always the risk of arc flash. It's just the level of that it is. So you need to gain that understanding of that level of arc flash. So the book covers and guides you in achieving that understanding. And once you understand it, then you can reduce the risk posed by the arc flash. There's many levels. Obviously, PPE is one, but that should be the last resort. There's a lot of steps that you can go through to reducing the arc flash before you get to that stage. So, safe working on or near energised electrical equipment. So this is for a licensed electrical worker who is a competent person. So basically, near will be defined for a competent person is within 500 millimetres of an exposed energised part. For a person who is not competent, say a person who's not an electrical worker, it will be 3 metres. So the risks when you're working within 500 millimetres from arc flash or electric shock is pretty much the same as when you're working on it. So the exposed part is the probably the critical thing to understand. So anything that is less than IP2X, or as in anything that a person can touch with a finger, and the finger is based on the standard test finger. So if there's more than 12 millimetres gap that you can get something in, then it will be an exposed part. So, and the book will give you a guide on implementing risk mitigation strategies to ensure the work can be carried out safely. So it's all about when you have to do work in that area, then you can actually implement things to do it safely. We've got another one on service and submain polarity testing. The one of the big issues with service and submain testing is that people don't, they underestimate the importance of the PEN conductor. The protective earth neutral conductor, as in the supply conductor prior to the MEN system, that is an earth conductor as well as a neutral conductor. It is critical. It is the most critical earth conductor in an installation. Once you understand that, you know the importance of getting the polarity testing correct, so that active is active, neutral is neutral, earth is earth, and then that the neutral conductor is continuous back to the star point of the transformer. That's very, very critical. So this book gives you guidance on various methods of testing that for service and submains. So there's another book which is quite large in comparison. It covers testing of low voltage installations. So up the front, it gives you an understanding of the importance of the appropriate testing to ensure electrical installation is electrically safe. And we keep in mind the two things that are most important is direct contact. We need to prevent anyone having direct contact with a energised electrical part. And the other is indirect electrical contact, which is when there's a fault and earthed appliances, class 1 appliances, the frame will become energised until the protection operates. It highlights important considerations when you're selecting test equipment, maintaining test equipment, and gives you some guidance in that as well. So it's one of the fundamental things that as electricians we all have to do is inspection and testing to ensure that the installation, to the extent we affected it, is compliant with Section 8 of the wiring rules. There's another book that covers isolation and lockout procedures. So this provides basic guidance on identifying the equipment that you're going to work on. So we've had incidents before where the equipment is misidentified. Safely isolating that equipment by various methods, testing that the equipment is isolated is critical. And if we go back to the energised work, the testing to ensure that it's de-energised is energised work and must be done in a safe way as if the equipment was energised. And after that, we need to secure the isolation to prevent inadvertent re-energisation. So we've had many incidents where someone's inadvertently re-energised the circuit that the apprentice is working on, or they accidentally re-energise it on themselves. So we've created a completely new book. This doesn't cover installation of renewable energy or anything else, but it does give some guidance to electrical contractors and electrical workers who work on the everyday switchboards. And a lot of switchboards now have renewable energy, such as batteries. They can have solar. They can even be standalone solar. They can have engine-driven generator systems, and no doubt within the next 12 months there'll probably be systems that I haven't even thought of yet will be connected to switchboards. So it just gives people an awareness how to safely operate on those switchboards, because some that we've come across aren't marked appropriately. They're not installed appropriately, and it's easy to get caught out if you turn off the main switch, test that the power's gone, and 30 seconds later an inverter kicks in and re-energises the circuits that you're about to work on. So it provides some basic guidance for the electrical workers in relation to that. So, thanks, Chris. I'll hand back.
Thanks, Peter. Some great resources coming your way very, very shortly. And the Director of Field Services, Michael Gibson, has just informed me that the ESO will send out a notification when these valuable resources will be up online and available to you directly. If you've got any questions of Peter, remember, put them in the chat box and we'll get to those during the panel session. Let's move on to our next speaker, and it is my pleasure to introduce Matthew Duncan, MEA and Electrical Licensing Committee member. He's going to talk about the importance of isolation upstream. Matthew has been committed to the electrical industry for more than 2 decades across a variety of industries, including water, network distribution, data centre infrastructure, commercial and domestic installations. Matthew is currently the Technical Support Manager for Master Electricians Australia, providing expert interpretation and assistance to contractors and electricians on national and state-based electrical safety standards. He has recently overseen MEA's National Solar Inspections Program on behalf of the Clean Energy Regulator. Matthew is also a member of the Electrical Equipment Committee and on the Technical Committee of the EL001 Wiring Rules with Standards Australia. Matthew's dedication to providing best practice outcomes for the electrical industry stems from his career being a licensed electrical fitter mechanic and accredited trainer. Welcome, Matthew, and I look forward to hearing about isolation upstream.
Thanks, Chris. Pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me. I'm here to talk about isolation upstream. We'll jump on my first slide. Okay, so to ensure that your electrical work is performed safely, it is essential to work de-energised. It's also a requirement of law under Section 14 of the Electrical Safety Regulation 2013. Now, arc flash is a serious risk even when only working near energised components, and it's working near that we get most of those issues starting to occur. When people are pulling in new circuits into a switchboard, a lot of the time they're not considering those line side terminals before they proceed, so they do need to isolate for those ones. Now, in the Electrical Licensing Committee, we do see a number of these incidents come before us where they could have been prevented by isolating that supply upstream of their work point. So upstream isolation really is the preferred method for all works, but when that isolation point is on a DNSP asset like a power pole, pillar, or the LV terminals of a transformer or distribution cabinet, some extra precautions will be required. So the following should be considered when you are performing an isolation via the service fuse mounted to a power pole. Suitable PPE does need to be worn, for example, insulated gloves and leather outers, a hard hat in case your fuse falls out of the holder while you're removing it, and perhaps eye protection, as many fine objects can become dislodged while you are looking up at that fuse holder coming down. Some appropriate tools you should have would be your telescopic fuse puller that is tested, of course. Now, these can vary in cost between $800 and $1,000, but they may also be available for rent from your local wholesaler or other equipment suppliers. But make sure you watch out for traffic when you're working on or near the road, and ensure that you set up a suitable drop zone that's going to be sectioned off around you where you're pulling that fuse down from. Now, correct identification of the fuse. When multiple customers are connected to that one pole, you'll need to make sure that you are accurately tracing the service line to the correct fuse holder. Now, some newer service fuses may have the street number marked on the base of the fuse carrier, but that's not always the case. So make sure that you're performing sufficient testing to make sure that you've correctly identified that isolation. Now, remember, if the site is not going to remain under your control, an outer service tag should be fitted to the fuse holder and then reinserted back into that base, just like you would on a standard lockout and tag out procedure. This is to prevent any accidental re-energisation by a third party if you weren't to still be on site. Some extra precautions, though, do need to be taken when you are working at a pillar, as they can contain exposed live parts near your work area with a high fault current potential that is significantly closer to you when compared to a pole. Additionally, they should never be left uncovered whilst unattended. If you do need to step away, the pillar should be reinstated with its cover and the retaining bolts put back in as well. Now, some adequate PPE will be required, just like with the poles, and at a minimum, you should have a tested insulating mat with your insulating gloves and leather outers again, and perhaps a face shield should be required at this point. Now, you may need a safety observer as well, depending on the complexity of the task and your on-site risk assessment. Some additional tools that you might require would include a pillar box D-bolt socket or T-bar to open the pillar. We've got those unique shaped bolts on the pillars. And the circuit, you'll need a clamp meter for your circuit identification. Now, when removing the cover from the pillar, you've got to be aware that items may dislodge after being held in place by the cover. It's not unusual, though, for some pillars to also be filled with things like ant or termite mounds. And in fact, some have actually been known to home a beehive. So if you do identify any of those situations, make sure you contact Energex or Ergon, or if you're in another state, your local DNSP to have those items repaired. Now, correct identification of the right fuse can be easily done using your clamp meter if your fuses are not numbered. You connect the clamp meter onto your suspected outgoing consumer mains cable, and then you can go and turn off the installation's main switch. And you should notice that the readings drop to 0. But if not, repeat the process until the correct circuit has been identified. But the same for as the pole fuse, if your site is not going to remain under your control, again, place an out of service tag onto that fuse holder and reinsert it into the base. Okay, so if your premise is fed from an LV transformer directly, whether that's a transformer or a distribution cabinet, you may not have access to that isolation point that you can operate. So in these situations, you will need to contact Energex or Ergon to schedule a de-energisation. These can be done by completing a customer-requested switching form on the Energex or Ergon website. If you go to the contractors section, there'll be a nice little tile there to select. Now, sometimes these isolation points are within your customer's control. They may own the asset, and then you may be able to actually perform that isolation. But a thorough risk assessment is needed considering the very high arc flash dangers present. These types of isolations, though, may not be within everyone's skill set, so please consider who is an appropriately competent person to perform these tasks, and you may need to engage someone external to your company. Okay, the electrical safety regulation defines what an eligible person is, and when we're looking at these isolations, eligible person is the person that's going to be probably performing these works. So the safety regulation defines eligible person as either A, a licensed electrical contractor, B, a person who holds an electrical mechanics license and is performing the work for that contractor as an employee, or C, they're a person who holds the mechanics license, is performing work for the person, which means themselves, or a relative of the person, at a property that they own or are living in. So what can an eligible person do? So under ESR section 223, there's a section here titled Disconnection and Reconnection of Low Voltage Electrical Installations. In part 1, it sets out that a section applies to the eligible person who performs electrical work on a consumer's terminals, main switchboard or consumer main. So they may be preparing repair work or any other replacement of the services. Or B, they're isolating supply to an electrical installation to eliminate an exclusion zone that would otherwise have existed. A lot of times we're doing that for other trades like painters and roofers and gutterers to make sure that they're safe when they're working in vicinity of an overhead line. Now, section 2 goes on to define how we can do that work. So it says, despite that anything else in this division, an eligible person may, in accordance with recognised industry practices, and those are the practices we just covered off, must be able to de-energise and re-energise the consumer's installation by removing or replacing a fuse wedge from that service fuse holder, or in the case of where there is a circuit breaker as the line disconnector, you may switch that on or off. So it's really about saying that as a licensed electrical worker doing those works, where you've got the obligation to disconnect and isolate that supply, you have the right to do that as well under the Act. So finally, a little bit of a recap as a reminder to why we are here and why we do these things. It is all about safety. It's about your safety, your workmate's safety, your customer's safety, and the safety of the general public. So by ensuring your safety, though, you will make sure that you are complying with the law. This protects your licence. The licensing committee unfortunately holds too many hearings that could have easily been avoided by correct upstream isolation. So remember that possible outcomes from the disciplinary committee can include things like licensing suspensions or cancellations on top of fines. And finally, the most important thing is that everyone deserves to come home safe at the end of every day. Thank you. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks, Matthew. Remember, if you've got a question for Matthew or any of our presenters, please use the Q&A chat box and we'll get to them during our panel session. Matthew, I'm sure I gathered from your presentation that a detailed risk assessment is critical, so you know exactly what you're faced with, and then to think about safety, yours, the people you're working with and alongside, and those you're working for. So there are a couple of the key messages to take home from Matthew's presentation. Again, if you have a question for him, please use the Q&A chat box. We'll get to those during the panel session that's coming up very, very shortly. Time now to talk about electrical equipment, and who better than to talk about electrical equipment than Carl Porritt. And Carl is the Director of Equipment Safety with the Electrical Safety Office. He began his career in the electrical industry in 1986 as a trainee technical officer with the State Electrical Commission of Victoria. This provided the solid foundation upon which his career developed. Moving to Queensland in 1995, so he saw the light and moved north. Carl found a calling to join the Queensland Police Service, reaching the rank of acting sergeant. Having served the community directly, Carl found the need to continue serving, joining the ESO in 2007 in the Equipment Safety Unit. Carl has brought his technical experience and a large dose of common sense to the role, and is now an integral part of the team, committed to protecting the community in a different way than when he was back in the QPS from the potential harm arising from electrical equipment, particularly household appliances. Today, technology advances introduce new risks requiring Carl's team to monitor and find new ways to minimise those risks. Welcome, Carl.
Thanks, Chris. What an introduction. Makes me feel more important. But I'm very much a pragmatic, and without blowing our trumpet, I think regulators do a pretty good job around Australia. We live with equipment around us, dozens of appliances around the home. We go to work, there's appliances everywhere. So generally on the whole, I think equipment is pretty safe in Australia, and that's largely due to regulators doing a lot of work behind the scenes. But yeah, from time to time we do see incidents, and for instance, when solar PV rooftops were introduced, we saw a number of incidents occurring with the isolators, and over time we've improved the safety standards of the equipment, we've improved installation standards, and we've grown as a community learning and applying that experience. And that's some of the topics today, some of the trends we're seeing at the moment. Talking about lithium batteries today a little bit, touch on buying online safely, and I'll talk about the regulatory compliance mark. So battery safety, I guess I'm thinking this in terms of you sharing it with your families, your friends, your clients, but also what you do yourself. Battery tools have been around for a number of years now. They've reduced the risks of tripping on cords, etc. So they've been a great improvement. But the lithium batteries, we have seen an increasing trend. A lot of those do seem to be related to e-scooters. But some tips and trips around there. The three core areas I think that we can improve safety. The first one's buying safe product. So it's buying from reputable suppliers. Taking care when you're buying online that you're buying from someone from in Australia, someone that can honour the warranties, etc., that knows what they're doing. The second area, and probably the most important, is about use of the product and charging. We've got a lot of tips on our website about charging safely, but one of those is if you've been out core drilling with a hammer drill and it's boiling hot, and you go to your trailer and put it in the charger on a really hot day, you're increasing the risk of the battery failure there. Hopefully it's safe and just shuts down, but lithium batteries don't like high temperatures, so let it cool. Same with scooters. If the kids come home and they hop off, wait for it to cool a bit before you put it on the charger. Charging them in cool, dry places on hard surfaces. And one of the areas we've seen at the moment, please don't charge in exit ways to safe exits from rooms, etc. And another area that is important is the maintenance, the ongoing use of them. Look for swollen battery packs. Inspect products before you use them every time. And if you hear pops and cracks or sizzles, there's a sign something's going wrong there. And these products aren't really serviceable. We've seen a number of incidents with scooters occurring because of tinkering. Some people want to increase the power of their battery to get a bit more speed or length of use out of it. We've seen that they've led to some tragedies in some circumstances. So again, leave it to the professionals. We've got a lot of information on a website, like I said, so please go there. But we've also got some shared information with our Queensland Fire Department. Here's a little film from them.
Overcharging scooters can create a fire risk. Take charge. Always unplug scooters as soon as they've charged.
And a lot more resources on both ESO's website and Queensland Fire Department. I'd like to touch on buying online. I'm thinking of this from two aspects. Is one, yourself, but also your clients might be buying products online, calling you in to install them. There are a lot of risks these days when buying online. We've seen an instance where someone was on Amazon, Australia, but if you click around and click around and click around, you can actually end up on other sites. Someone somehow bought on a coffee maker, I think, from overseas. It ended up coming from America, and of course they're on a different power system. Plugged it in here and it went bang. The same can apply for other appliances. Not all appliances are built for 240 volt systems, so your clients may not, the householders may not be aware that they've bought these fancy light fittings from another country, and they might not have the appropriate insulation wiring within the fittings. So there are a lot of risks there, and we'll touch on ways that we can help to improve reduce those risks. Another area that we found on eBay, for instance, is the shipped from. That can be misleading because it may say shipped from some right of way in New South Wales, but it's actually shipped straight from overseas. It's a free text field that the supplier can write in, so that can be misleading to some people. So again, do some extra homework and ensure you're buying from an Australian supplier. The ACCC's got a lot of information, some little tips and tricks on their website for buying online. Feel free to go on there, or Queensland Fair Trading also. And from your perspective as well, I guess you need to do your own homework if you're buying products for use in stacking your van, or if you're buying white goods from overseas. You might be becoming the importer and have some responsibilities. I'll talk about more of that in just a moment. But yeah, here's a little video we like to play. It's a little quite catchy, and hopefully your clients might enjoy it too. catchy. I always love it. So at that little grab there, talked about the regulatory compliance mark, and as I said about buying safely online. If you're importing white goods yourself to install in a home, you might become the responsible supplier. That has quite significant responsibilities. You might need to get test reports and gain a certificate and register as a responsible supplier. There's a fair bit to that, but ultimately you're responsible for testing and examining that equipment to ensure it's electrically safe. But most of the time you're part in the electrical equipment safety system, the EESS, which is the framework used to help protect householders from the risks from electrical household appliances. Your part would often be as part of the supply chain. You might be the final, in a sense, a retailer. When you go and install your equipment, those fittings, the wiring you're using, the safety switches, etc., they are household equipment under the ESS, and as the retailer or last step in the supply chain, you're required to buy it from a registered responsible supplier. Now, on the whole, that's pretty easy. Generally, when you're buying from a number of our good quality wholesalers around Australia, they're already doing that for you. They're sourcing it from responsible suppliers. The easy recognition of a product complying with the ESS is the regulatory compliance mark, as you can see on the screen. The tick inside the circle, inside the triangle there. That's this easy indicator to say that the product, the supplier marks up on the product to declare they comply with all the laws that are around the equipment safety. So if it hasn't got that mark, you wouldn't have that confidence. It doesn't technically comply with the law. So you could share that with your clients as well. The homeowner that wants to install that light, and if it doesn't have the RCM on it, that's your indicator that it may not comply with Australian safety standards. So the more detail can be found about the ESS on the eess.gov.au website. Have a think about that. This is a lot of information on there. There's different risk levels, and it gets a little bit too much to cover right now. Teach everyone to look for that RCM. Pick up appliances in the shop. Pick up your RCBOs in your van should have the RCM on it. It's a great way to help ensure that equipment meets Australian safety standards towards keeping our community safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate the advice, and I am pleased to hear that generally equipment is pretty safe, but as a good practice we should always check the RCM. Don't mix and match batteries and chargers is a key message that we got to take home. And I must say you guys are very busy because of the new technologies and keeping up with them. There's always new products, new gadgets that also have implications and safety standards and things need to be maintained, and you need to explore those and keep up with them. So keep up the great work, and thanks very much, Carl, for bringing us up to date with that. Well, time to bring home our presentations, and last but not least, I'd like to introduce the Commissioner for Electrical Safety, Keith McKenzie. He started his career in '86 after gaining his electrical fitter and mechanics licence. He worked for a number of companies on domestic, commercial, hospital, petrochemical and industrial projects. He has served on a range of board and committees in the area of apprentice training, construction, training competencies, workplace health and safety and Australian standards, and has been a member of the Electrical Safety Board and Electrical Licensing Committee since 2011. Prior to his role as Commissioner, Keith was President of the Queensland and Northern Territory Electrical Trades Union branches. Welcome, Keith. I know you're passionate about electrical safety, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you today.
Well, thanks, Chris, and thanks for everyone jumping online today. Looks like we've got quite a few people, from workers to employers to industry participants. So thanks for sparing a few minutes today to sit back and join this webinar. Let's get into it, eh? So the first thing I want to talk about is the electrical licence. So whilst this electrical licence means that you're allowed to do electrical work, and once you're an electrician for life, but you can't work without this licence. One of the important parts of this licence is that, and where you potentially can lose it, is that where you perform or supervise electrical work, and due to the performance of that work, a person or property is not electrically safe. So if you're in charge of supervising apprentices, you might be a foreperson or supervisor supervising workers. If something goes wrong, your licence is certainly at risk. So it's fairly holds a pretty high prestige for someone with this licence. Doesn't mean you just go out there and do their day-to-day work. And if you don't hold this licence, you might be an employer that employs people who hold this licence. You've also got a duty too. So one of the things we need to look at today is about the supervision of apprentices and what that looks like. So it's about whether we have apprentices employed by us, it's to make sure we have the appropriate supervision and provide the support and mentoring for an apprentice. Ensure they have the scope of work to match it. So if you're not familiar with the work, how is that apprentice going to actually know what sort of work they're required to do? So the Licensing Education Committee and the Licensing Committee provided a focus group saying what we should do is actually do a booklet for the supervising electrical apprentice. And here's the booklet here. This is a pretty cool copy, but this is available online as we speak. If you go to eso.qld.gov.au, look up electrical. On the right-hand side, you'll see apprentices, and then you'll find this guide. And we'll send some information out as well with information, so you can download this today, hand it out to apprentices. So whilst we've got some great employers out there who probably have a booklet similar to this, we've also got employers on the first day of the apprentices start. They give them a toolbox and off they go. So we've got to set up the apprentice for success. So this book has been developed with a lot of consultation through industry, and it's out there now. The second part of it was what we need to do to actually support the apprentice and support the person supervising the apprentice as well. And I'll talk a bit about that in a few minutes. So this guide is really about what's the purpose of it, to set the apprentice up for success. So they need to know their involvement is going to be within the electrical industry, making sure that the supervising tradesperson knows what they need to teach them and provides an understanding of the electrical safe working practices of this particular book. So it's 34 pages. It could be 334, the amount of information provided out there to apprentices, but we've got to keep it short, sharp and simple. And there's a number of parts. Now, the first part is about the recommended safe working practices of it. So normally this would be at the end when you take them through an apprentice about the requirements. But if an apprentice is only going to read the first 3 or 4 pages of the book, these are the most important documents they need to read. It goes through about health and safety and responsibility of work, what's the requirements for you as a supervising tradesperson and the apprentice. Electrical safety risk management, about dangers working electricity, managing risks, primary risk control measures and the essential steps for de-energisation of equipment. And that's where we find the licensing committee where things are going bad, where apprentices are receiving electric shocks. And since 2021 to 2024, the licensing committee had dealt with electrical workers who are supervising apprentices where they've received a shock. And as we know, your first shock could certainly be your last shock. Part 4, 5 and 6 once again goes through what's effective supervision. So whilst we hand this to apprentices, they need to know what they're going to be taught, and as a supervising tradesman you should have a look at this booklet too and get an understanding. And the importance of how we actually report incidents and accidents, how it's important to undertake the low voltage and CPR, that's a requirement undertaking or assisting in electrical work, and how we report it, and also then the appendix guide, what is required. Now, whilst this will be online, as technology grows and system grows and legislation changes, we can actually update this as we go along. So we're not going to hand out 7,500 booklets to apprentices, but we might work on a way forward. If you can't download them, you want a pretty cool book, we might work out a way. Because it's important that every apprentice actually receives these books and sets them up for success. The next one is what's it like to supervise a tradesperson, and it's how that tradesperson supervises an apprentice. So some tradespeople don't like to supervise apprentices. I don't know why. They're not interested. They don't like them for whatever reason. And if that's the case, don't have that supervising tradesperson with that apprentice. A tradesperson needs to have the conventional skills, like about the knowledge, skills, attributes and behaviours. What's it like to actually supervise someone? You might have had a bad experience in your life as an apprentice. Well, you don't want to pass that knowledge on. So the focus group said we need to develop a course. So we're about to get involved with this course, and all of a sudden TAFE Queensland in October last year drops the course. So we commend TAFE Queensland. It's called Mentoring an Apprentice or Trainee. Now, it doesn't matter with electrical apprentice, plumbing apprentice, hairdressing apprentice, it doesn't matter. This course will allow you to give you that skills you need to nurture that apprentice or trainee through their journey. And you've got to be quick, but we'll send this out. But if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to the TAFE website. You can jump online, it's free. There's not too many free things around these days, but you jump on that, it's free. It takes about 45 to 50 minutes, and you get a little cool certificate, and that shows you what you like to actually supervise an apprentice. And it sets you up for success. So I commend anyone there supervising an apprentice to undertake that, and any of your employers out there to probably really encourage your tradespeople to do that training as well. Well, because we know the electrical industry is high risk, and if an apprentice does something wrong, it could be a fatality or an arc flash or something bad. So we need to do one step forward. So while TAFE has developed that course for electrical, we didn't think it was good enough for the electrical industry. So with some conversations with TAFE Queensland and some funding by the Joint Electrical Training Council, JETCO, which is supported by the ETU and Master Electricians, is that they're going to develop another training course for the supervising of electrical apprentice. So the requirement will actually, you'll do two. One is that soft skills about how to actually talk to apprentices and treat them with respect, because, in the day, you're representing their mother, their father, brother and sister as you work with them day in, day out, dealing with all their issues, life skills issues, boyfriend, girlfriend issues, whole range of stuff, mental health issues. But this one here will actually take the tradesperson through what's expected of them to teach them, to hopefully to ensure that they get home at the end of the day. And this will hopefully be out by about July next year, because there'll be a fair bit of consultation, but this is a great initiative, and commend TAFE and JETCO for getting involved in that. It's a privilege to train apprentices, and unfortunately, here's some examples where workers fund the licensing committee when things have gone wrong, where apprentices received a shock for failure to isolate correctly, where apprentices are really keen to go out there and just do the job without sitting back. And that's a failure of the tradesperson for not giving clear instructions and adequately supervise an apprentice on site. Under Electrical Safety Regulation 2025, it's quite clear that if an apprentice does something wrong, you're in the gun, one of a better word. It says a licensed electrical worker and not the training person, as if the licensed worker was performing the work. So you cannot blame the apprentice. So if the apprentice does something crazy or outrageous, it's your fault for not giving that correct instruction from the get-go. So bear in mind, you've got to ensure that apprentice gets to come home at the end of the day. Bit of a fun fact, and this is unfortunately we had an electrical apprentice out there, doesn't have a licence, started earning some bit of pocket money on the side, and so they're doing their own electrical work, and they were fined $45,000 in the magistrates' court. So we encourage all tradespeople to make sure that the apprentices, just because they know how to maybe install some lights and power points, you don't go and do that work. And in fact, we've got a lot of electrical workers, unfortunately, out there probably doing work for their mates who don't have electrical contractors licence, and you can't do it. It's not worth the risk of your licence, and potentially if an incident or accident happens on that particular site, that a homeowner may not have insurance, and you might be paying off your own home and someone else's home. So if you want to earn some extra money, maybe go do a bit of lawn mowing on the side or wash windows. So a couple of take-home messages for everyone. Are you competent? Competent to test, competent to supervise an apprentice. If you're an apprentice, are you being effectively supervised? If you think you're getting not a good deal from the tradesperson assisting you, ask for another tradesperson to be assigned for you, or stand up. You've got the right for 4 years to actually undertake a great apprenticeship. And as a tradesperson, are you providing adequate supervision? If you haven't got time to teach the apprentice, we'll put your hand up, and if you don't want to train an apprentice, we'll let the employer know and someone else can do it at really good what. Don't undertake electrical contracting work unless you've got an electrical contracting licence, and certainly stay safe and be proud. Have a nice day.
Thanks, Keith. And there you go. You can see the passion coming out in Keith, and I do, in all sincerity, thank you for reinforcing the importance of proper supervision of apprentices, and they are the future of the industry coming through. So thanks, Keith. If you've got a question of Keith, or any of our panel members, don't forget to use the Q&A chat box. Get to us online. We're about to go into the panel session. We appreciate the input of each of our presenters. So it's now time to get the collective 7 here of who have we got? Rob, Paris, Shane, Peter, Matthew, Carl and Keith for some questions, which hopefully will pop up onto our screen very shortly, and we can get to those questions. The first one is from Michael in Weipa, and you mentioned that Weipa would be joining us today, and we're thankful that they're here, Rob. My electrical licence renewal is due later this year. What changes are there in renewing my licence? Who wants to take that one up? Look at him.
I can briefly speak to that one.
Yep.
But I could probably suggest that you get in touch with our licensing team for more detailed information. But we'll be soon sending out the next range of communications to help people prepare for the transition to online licensing, and that information will be going out through our subscriber database and direct to those licence holders. So watch your inbox, please double check, make sure it's not going to spam, and if you're not subscribed to our eSafe, please jump on and do so. That's where we share important information and updates about things like transitioning to our online licensing database. So you can find out more very soon. But if you need some more particular information about renewing your licence, please reach out to our licensing team. Their details are on our website. Jump on electricalsafety.qld.gov.au. Thank you.
All right, here's a question for Matthew, and pardon my ignorance if I get the technical side of this wrong, Matthew. I am not a Sparky by any stretch of the imagination. With regards to upstream isolation and, say, a 3-phase light and small power switchboard distribution board with incomer line side IP2 protection. Okay, that's a mouthful for someone who doesn't know what he's talking about. Is the upstream isolation campaign targeted in this style of board?
Well, I'd say it still is yes, definitely. Those styles of boards do have some pretty good protection around those incoming sides. So if you've turned off the main switch, the majority of areas should be safe. So it really would be assessment of where you were working. Unfortunately, we've seen some incidences where even cables have been pulled in through the top of a switchboard as a new circuit, and they've made contact with those line side connections. So if that's at all possible, then it should be de-energised for that point. But if the with the new regulations coming out about working near energised components, that would still be in effect for those. So look out for those as they come forward, but definitely consider that you should be upstream isolating at all times.
Let's go on to a question for Keith. What are the common issues or factors that you see from those who present to the licensing committee?
Yeah, great question. And the main one is failing to test or test adequately. So generally someone's received an electric shock and we find out that person's done no testing or doesn't know how to do it. And it's a bit bizarre because Section 8 of the wiring rules tells you what you need to do. 3017, the Australian standard, tells you how to do it even better. And Pete mentioned there's going to be a booklet out soon that's going to even tell you the third time. But I think the main reason is that people don't understand why they are testing and what they're testing for. So that's the main one. And the second one is young people and apprentices receiving electric shock, and it's not acceptable.
All right, a shout out to BAC and Mega Electrics, Ace on Power Team. So thanks for joining us. And a question for Paris. Will all new Act requirements commence at the same time?
Thanks for the question. Short answer, yes, they will. So the Act dissented on the 30th of August, which was last week. So all the amendments relating to electrical safety in that bill did commence on the 30th of August. I did mention some dates in relation to the electrical safety regulation amendments, which are upcoming in relation to working in roof spaces, de-energised, and working on or near electrical equipment. Those are estimated to start on the 1st of January next year. So yeah, keep an eye out for that regulation as well.
Okay, Shane, you haven't missed out either. They've got a question for you here. How many QTPs are applicable for a business?
Yeah, thanks for the question. The number of QTPs for a business really depends on the size of the business, and it also depends on the footprint of the business. So looking at our business statewide, we have up to about 9 QTPs. So, it's just depending on the workforce, the size of the workforce and the footprint of that business.
Question for Carl. What is the ESO doing about dodgy listings for dodgy products? Do you audit these sites, or can you get them removed?
Yes, the regulators across Australia do work together. We've got a compliance and engagement program under which we do take audits of online suppliers. Plus, we also have connections with a lot of the online marketplaces. For instance, we can email eBay and ask them to take down items. Same with Amazon, Catch, My Deals. So we can take enforcement action too. So we are regularly doing a few hundred of those a year. So there is action ongoing, but it's it's such a big world out there. They can take one down and put another up. So it takes constant work, but we are doing that behind the scenes.
We have a question from Antonella, and thanks to everyone who joined us online today. For arc flash and electrical PPE, would you recommend using NFPA 70E standard?
I can jump in for that one. I'd actually recommend we use the Australian standard AS NZS 4386 as your primary guide for protection and selection of appropriate PPE for arc flash.
Just a quick thanks to those who commented on the Don't DIY video. As Rob said, this campaign is targeted to the DIY reno folk as a strong reminder to never do it yourself and always use a licensed professional like those you are watching today, which probably brings me to the last question for you, Rob. You touched on community messages. How can contractors and the industry help support the community messages of ESO?
That's an excellent question, and we very much appreciate the support. So one of the things you can do is, if you follow the Electrical Safety Office Facebook page, you can promote and share the campaigns that we offer up on the social media. We have some fantastic partnerships to raise awareness with the industry and the community, particularly the partnership that we had with the Wiggles, one of Australia's most beloved children's entertainment groups. That particular video, if you Google Wiggles Electricity, has reached over 6.1 million views already, and there's a series of short form video clips that have also reaching well over 3 million views. There's some really great simple messaging there for members of the community, particularly our youngest ones, around what electricity is, where it can be found in the home and how to be safe with it. Also some key messages about sleeping with devices near pillows and safe charging, things that we can try and avoid to reduce the likelihood or incidences of electrical related injuries or fire in the home. Please also feel free to promote, post, share the new DIY campaign. It's another message aimed at the household to try and improve safety around our communities. So anything you can do to help share the message, including promoting and sharing the remaining Electrical Safety Fortnight events that we have up on our webpage, anything that we can do to bring more people in to learn more about how to be electrically safe. That's great.
Excellent. You've almost stolen my thunder at the end, Rob. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to the panel. We appreciate your input. We appreciate your presentations. And we appreciate some of the great advice that you've been able to bring forward today. Our thanks to all our speakers and, of course, panel members in Rob, Para, Shane, Peter, Matthew, Carl and Keith. Thanks to all of you who joined us online today. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy lives and, of course, business and work. I would like to remind you that it's not too late to register for our other Electrical Safety Fortnight events. As Rob touched on, the Electrical Safety in the Community webinar is on tomorrow. In week 2, we have a number of great events, including an information session for RTOs and trainers, a large-scale solar farm forum, an electrical inspectors forum, an ELC worker and contractor engagement session, a community event in Yarrabah, and an electricity entities engagement webinar. For more information on these and on general electrical safety, you can visit worksafe.qld.gov.au. Just a quick reminder, you'll receive an email from us to complete a feedback survey about today's event. We really value your feedback. It helps us mould presentations, future presentations, update ones like these. So if you could spare just 2 minutes, we'd really appreciate that you do that feedback and complete it for us. That's really the conclusion of today's presentation. On behalf of the ESO, I'm Chris Bombolis. Thanks for joining us, and remember, always work safe and home safe.